Welcome to Resolving Reflections, hosted by Dr. William Guy. This is a program that focuses on the intersection of philosophy, science, and faith. Dr. Guy is presently a psychiatrist practicing in southeastern Michigan. He obtained his PhD in experimental pathology at Wayne State University. His doctoral minors were clinical biochemistry and pharmacology. His dissertation topic was in the realm of cancer genetics. Following his doctoral training, he became a professor of genetics at Eastern Michigan University, where he worked for several years before going back to medical school at the University of Michigan for his medical degree. Following graduation from U of M, he did residency training at William Beaumont Hospital in diagnostic radiology and nuclear medicine. Many of his awards and publications are in the field of radiology. Because of a desire to experience greater personal significance, he went on to further his medical training and completed residency in psychiatry at the Detroit Medical Center with some fellowship work in the field of functional neuroimaging, which is a bridge between the fields of radiology and psychiatry. In addition to his medical practices in Michigan, Dr. Guy is also a consultant for multiple pharmaceutical companies, where his duties involve the education of doctors, nurses, pharmacists, and other medical professionals when new psychotropic medications are approved by the FDA. Today's guests are the popular evangelical atheist, the Precocious Atheist, and the late pioneer psychiatrist, Dr. Carl Jung.
Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm starting a series where we're going to take a look at the questions posed by modern evangelical atheists. Now, one question you might have right away is, what's a modern evangelical atheist, and how does that differ from the old generic atheist of the past? The best definition I've come across I found was on the internet, at a website called the Urban Dictionary. Some of you are probably familiar with it. According to the Urban Dictionary definition, an evangelical atheist is one who not only believes there is no God or other supreme being, but is obsessed with convincing everyone around them to become an atheist too, usually through hardline intolerance, the kind they accuse other religions of. When cornered, they usually try to put down their opponent's religion and bash them for, quote, blind faith, close quote, not realizing that their belief that there is no God is no more or less valid or provable than the other guy's belief that there is one. Not to be confused with normal atheists or agnostics, who, for the most part, just don't talk about religion and accept the beliefs of those around them as their prerogative. Evangelical atheists are particularly common on the internet. And more is said, but that's all I'm going to quote for now. In other words, the old atheists were rather vocal about separation of church and state and about religion being presented in the schools, but they didn't care about what you did on Sunday or Saturday or wherever you go to Bible study or church or mosque or synagogue. Okay? The new atheists are determined to make you feel stupid for believing in God. Anybody that believes in God is somehow delusional and a threat to civilization. That's pretty much their perspective. Does that sound about right? Would that sum it up?
People who have blind faith that God is real are fools. They are deluded. And I want them to realize that faith in God is a mental illness.
This is Mr. Precocious Atheist. He has a rather prominent web presence. He is famous for his YouTube discussion entitled 10 Questions Every Intelligent Christian Must Answer. Thank you for appearing on the program today, and welcome. Could you start off by giving us a synopsis of your intro that you have on your YouTube site there? Do you have that memorized, by the way?
No, but I gave your producers the file and they can play it.
Fair enough. Let's go ahead and play the first part of that now.
In this short video, I'm going to assume that you're an educated Christian. You have a college degree and you've been trained to think logically and rationally about the world we live in. For example, you might be an engineer or scientist, a doctor, pharmacist or nurse, a teacher, a manager or an administrator, a government employee, a business owner, an account rep, an executive, a lawyer, an accountant, a person working in the financial sector or human resources, an architect or designer, a software developer. In other words, you're a smart person. You know how the world works and you know how to think critically. If you're an educated Christian, I would like to talk with you today about an important and interesting question. Have you ever thought about using your college education to think about your faith? Your life and your career demand that you behave and act rationally. Let's apply your critical thinking skills as we discuss 10 simple questions about your religion. Here's an example of the kind of thing I'm talking about. As a Christian, you believe in the power of prayer. According to a recent poll, 3 out of 4 doctors believe that God is performing medical miracles on earth right now. Most Christians believe that God is curing cancers, healing diseases, reversing the effects of poison, and so on. So here's question 1. Why won't God heal amputees? It's a simple question, isn't it?
Right away, I've got a problem with this question. Okay, the author implies that if God would cause limbs to spontaneously regrow in response to prayer, that he would suddenly have faith that God is real, and he would start praying and reading the Bible, whatever. Okay, I don't buy that. If that happened every time somebody lost a limb and somebody said, "I heal you in the name of God," or whatever, and instantly the limb would grow back, that would not convince people like this, people like him, that God was real. In fact, I don't think it would convince me, because if it happened that easily on a regular basis, we would automatically assume this was a natural event. We would presume that it is our belief that releases some form of energy that we just can't measure, and that energy would go out and somehow stimulate the stem cells, the somatic stem cells, in the dismembered portion of the limb, and it would accelerate limb regrowth. That would be our explanation. Why would we have to believe that it was the eternal creator of the universe that performed this event? Why would we call it a miracle? It would be natural then. Hello? Okay? If it happened on a regular basis, it would simply be a natural phenomenon. And it would not necessarily stimulate faith. Now you could say, well, what if you saw God's hand reach down from the clouds and put your limb back on it would instantly, and it would seal up and be healed? Now, would that be enough? I would say even that wouldn't be enough for a lot of people. Why? Because, hey, look around the universe. There are some really big planets. On those really big planets, might there be evolved some giant being that has big arms that can reach down? How would you know that's not some type of extraterrestrial? I mean, if you don't want to believe in God, nothing you see is going to change your mind if you really don't want to believe that there's a higher power that's going to hold you morally accountable for your behaviors. And ultimately, I think that's what it comes down to. But, I digress. I'm getting off topic. I apologize. Let's go back.
We all know that amputated legs do not spontaneously regenerate in response to prayer. Amputees get no miracles from God. If you're an intelligent person, you have to admit that this is an interesting question. On the one hand, you believe that God answers prayers and performs miracles. On the other hand, you know that God completely ignores amputees when they pray for miracles. How do you deal with this discrepancy? As an intelligent person, you have to deal with it because it makes no sense. In order to handle it, notice that you have to create some kind of rationalization. You have to invent an excuse on God's behalf to explain this strange fact of life. You might say, well, God must have some kind of special plan for amputees. So you invent your excuse, whatever it is, and then you stop thinking about it because it's uncomfortable.
Most Christians today do not believe that God answers many prayers with miracles like the ones that Moses and Elijah and Jesus did. All right? These miracles often defy the laws of physics, especially with Jesus. He goes around raising the dead, curing congenital blindness, walking on water. That's a clear violation of many laws of physics. If those kinds of miracles are occurring today, they're happening somewhere not around me, because I've not been privy to seeing anything like that, okay? The types of miracles that most fundamentalist Christians report today are what Carl Jung would call synchronicities. Now, I differ with Jung with regard to his particular definition of synchronicity, but it gives you, I think, his definition gives us an approximate idea as to the phenomena that I'm talking about. In these events, the laws of physics are not violated, but the right thing happens at just the right time after the subject prays. Okay, let me tell you a story about a friend of mine. It's a true story, and it gives you a very good idea as to what I mean when I'm talking about synchronicities that are described as miracles by many. All right, here's an individual who was going through significant financial hardship. And he tried many things to get money, and nothing was working. He had a job, but his debts it was a divorce situation, so his debts were way higher than what he had coming in. And his car kept breaking down, and it was breaking down so much that he felt his job was in jeopardy. He had no money to get the car fixed. He had no money to buy a new car. So there he was, a lot of trouble here. So he comes home from work one day. Well, actually didn't come home. He was towed home because his car broke down again. He gets home and turns on the television, and there on the TV was this guy with his family all around him, and he's got a beer in his hand, and he's going, "Yay, won the lottery." He won several $1 million. And the news crew was going on about how wonderful it was for him because he worked in the factory all those years, and now he's got this payoff and never have to work again, and everyone was ecstatic. Now, as my patient watched that, he became enraged. He had bought lottery tickets out of desperation, and of course never won anything. And this beer-drinking guy, and he didn't know whether that guy was a Christian or a person of faith on any level. He just knew that this guy was a beer drinker, and that represented something to him. And he flew off the handle. He screamed at God in rage, shook his fist at the ceiling for like a half an hour. I'm through with you. You know, I've gone to church all those years. I've been in Bible studies. I prayed. I talked to God. I talked to other people about God and everything. And what for what? Now I'm bankrupt. I'm going to lose my house. I'm facing bankruptcy. I'm going to lose my job. Everything. And for what? I'm through with you because you are worthless. I mean, that's how he screamed to God. Now, after his tirade, he got to thinking, I'm losing my house, I'm going to lose my job, lost my family, everything is gone, and all I had really was hope that maybe God would somehow restore my life. And now that I've given up on God, I don't even have that anymore. And with that realization, he changed his mind. And he said, God, that stuff that I just said, I take it back. I take it back. No matter what I lose, no matter if I get fired from my job, no matter if I'm stranded on the highway and have to walk home with no money, I am not giving up on you, no matter what. Well, he felt pretty good about that. He said that after that experience, he felt uplifted because he never knew, he thought about, being at the end of his rope before. He wondered whether his faith would still be there at the end of his rope, and he was kind of happy to realize that it was. Anyway, the next day, his car did work well enough to get to work, and he went to work the next day, and he got home and got a call from his brother, and his brother said, guess what? He goes, what? I won the lottery. He goes, you gotta be kidding. What a coincidence. All right, how much did you win? And his brother goes, oh, it's life-changing. He says, how much did you win? And after hemming and hawing, he finally got his brother to say he won $3.5 million. Well, he bought the guy a new car. Okay? So, my friend interpreted that experience, looking at his prayer the day before, his rage the day before, and the whole circumstance of the day before, and how it revolved around the lottery situation. And then the very next day, his brother winning the lottery and getting him that car, and saying, hey, that's a God thing, okay? Now what's interesting is while he was having this tirade against God and screaming at the ceiling, his brother was actually in the store buying the lottery ticket at that very time. Okay? They actually could figure that out. Now, you say, wow, how do you know that's true? How do you know your friend's not lying? Because that's a strange coincidence. Well, I know it's not. I know it's true because the friend is me, all right? That happened to me. Right? Now, I've seen quite a few things that I would consider synchronicities, and that I would say that's God. And I would certainly, in my life, I would say that situation was a God situation, that there was some intervention. What is the probability that my brother would win that kind of money at a lottery the day after a situation where I flew off the handle over a lottery ticket? You say, well, it could be a coincidence. Could be. But if you take a look at those probabilities, that's hard to swallow, that happened by chance alone. All right? Now, you can always call a synchronicity a coincidence. But one thing that people like the precocious atheists, one thing that they don't understand is that strong believers don't become strong believers because they go to church a lot or listen to very charismatic preachers. That doesn't produce very strong faith. All right? The thing that produces faith that God exists and that He's real is the observation that they personally experienced a number of highly improbable events, these synchronicities that common sense insists could not be attributed to blind coincidence alone.
What are you talking about? What is synchronicity?
As I may have mentioned, this is a term introduced by pioneering Swiss psychiatrist Dr. Carl Jung.
Synchronicity designated the parallelism of time and meaning between psychic and psychophysical events, which scientific knowledge has thus far been unable to reduce to a common principle. The term explains nothing. It simply formulates the occurrence of meaningful coincidences which in themselves are chance happenings, but are so improbable that we must assume them to be based on some kind of principle or on some property of the empirical world. From this it follows either that the psyche cannot be localized in space or that space is relative to the psyche.
Well, that clears it up nicely. Thank you for that.
Let me take a different approach. Synchronicity is about the causal connection of two or more psychophysic phenomena. This concept was inspired by a patient's case. A young woman I was treating had, at a critical moment, a dream in which she was given a golden scarab. While she was telling me this dream, I sat with my back to a closed window thinking about what she was saying, when suddenly I heard a noise behind me, like a gentle tapping. Tap, tap, tap. I turned around and saw a flying insect knocking against the window pane from the outside. I opened the window and caught the creature in the air as it flew in my hand. I opened my hand and, to my surprise, it was a scaraboid beetle, the rosechafer, which, contrary to its usual habits, had evidently felt the urge to get into a dark room at this particular moment. Well, let me tell you, the meaningful connection is obvious enough. In view of the approximate identity of the chief objects, the scarab and the beetle, the scarab is a classic example of rebirth symbol. The ancient Egyptian book of What is in the Netherworld, it describes how the dead sun god changes himself at the 10th station into Khepri, the scarab, and then, at the 12th station, mounts the barge which carries the rejuvenated sun god into the morning sky.
So, are you saying that God set the whole thing up?
You need to get your diaper changed, you stinking brat. I never said anything about God.
Yes, you did. You take your Alzheimer's meds, dude. You mentioned the sun god dying and turning into a bug at some gas station and then getting on some barge that takes him back into the heavens.
I said nothing about heaven. I don't know what causes these synchronicities. I never said that I knew for sure or who or what caused them. I said that these events were acausal.
Acausal? So nobody caused them. Isn't that what I am saying? Doesn't a causal coincidence sum up my position? If nobody caused these events, then it was just meaningless coincidence.
These events are too improbable to be due to random chance, you little troll. Have you never taken a statistics class? Wait a minute, I'm guessing not. It can't be coincidence because the probability of these two things occurring together at just the right time is too small. My position is that something outside of time and space, some natural force or intelligence, has orchestrated these events to occur together. The concept of acausality states that synchronistic events are beyond the realm of cause and effect, totally independent of time and space causation of any kind. Now, because our thought processes are bound by the laws of time and space, we cannot even think about possible causes of synchronicity. Therefore, such causes are unthinkable.
So, some kind of god or gods cause these things to happen together. But, since these beings are outside of time and space, we can't even speculate about them because our brains are bound by time and space.
Now you're getting the picture.
I'm going to disagree with that statement. I believe that there is good evidence that human consciousness, human awareness, extends beyond the biological brain and the boundaries of time and space. Consider, for example, near-death experiences. I've worked in multiple settings. I've worked in the hospital setting, certainly I do private practice, and I've also worked in about 8 nursing homes over the years. I've treated hundreds of patients that have suffered from cardiopulmonary arrest, and many of them have been resuscitated in the emergency rooms or in the operating room because they had the arrest on the operating table. Okay, and of these individuals that experience cardiopulmonary arrest and essentially die and come back, a third of them that are resuscitated will report some type of near-death experience. Now, these near-death experiences can range. They can range from simply popping out of their body and looking down on the medical arena where they can see the doctors working on them from above, and sometimes they're able to tell you which doctor has a bald spot, for example. Sometimes when they pop out, when they think of a relative, they're automatically with that relative. Now what's interesting, it can be a friend as well, it doesn't have to be a relative, but what's interesting in these cases is when they pop out and think of a friend or relative and they're automatically with them, they are able to describe specific things about the person that they're spying on. Okay? They can describe what they were wearing, they can describe what they were doing and where they were, and they can often quote their conversations word for word. Word for word. Now, I have interviewed both the person that was dead and I've interviewed the person that was seen. Their stories corroborate. Now, it's only happened a few times, I have to say, but it's happened enough to where I can only come to one conclusion. I mean, think about it. Either we've got patients who are lying to their doctors for no reason, because I'm not the only doctor that's made this observation. Okay? Either we've got patients who are just pathological liars, but not just the patients. The people that their relatives and friends are lying to. So we've got this conspiracy going on.
And you believe them.
Why would they lie? That's stupid. Why would millions of people get together and with their relatives and their friends and make up these stories for gullible doctors? Why? They're not like writing books about this, okay? This would be tantamount to the greatest conspiracy in all of human history. Think about what you're saying. Either we have a soul, or there's this huge conspiracy, or doctors such as myself are liars and we're just making stories up for whatever reason. The chance that these temporarily dead people are accidentally guessing the word-for-word conversations of their loved ones, I think that's preposterous. I don't know about you.
Well, that might suggest that human awareness extends beyond space, but that doesn't say anything about time. And it doesn't prove that everybody even has a spirit. If everybody has a soul, then why do 2/3 of the people with heart stoppage not experience any out-of-body experience?
It's a good question. I don't know for certain. I'm not going to say that I'm that smart. With regard to the 2/3 that have no memory of what happened to them when they were dead, I can't say for sure. I suspect that they simply weren't dead enough. And I know that's a simplistic answer. But you know, it's like when people's hearts stop, we tend not to right away go in with a needle and biopsy their brains and take a look at neuron viability. If we did neuron viability studies, then maybe we'd have some better idea as to whether the out-of-body experiencers correlate with a greater degree of brain death than those without the out-of-body experience. We just don't do that sort of thing when people are dying on the table there. Okay, the organic brain may act like some type of electromagnet. And when it has sufficient energy, it has the ability to bind the other self to it, the spirit self, if you will. Okay, because we don't have a better term. Call it the soul, call it the spirit. It is us that is not bound to the body. So anyway, as long as this thing has enough juice in it, it's able to hold us in there. But when it drops below a critical level, we pop out. I mean, that's my explanation. And again, the people that don't pop out are probably, they still got enough juice. You know, but when we look at this dead person, all we know is that the EEG is flat and there's no heart activity, and so we call them all dead, not separate them out as to who is more dead than the other person. So I think that the fact that only 2/3 of the people have this experience, I think that's a reflection of the state of our medical science. We're just rather crude at this time, and we're not specifically looking at how dead people are. We just look at dead or alive.
But that doesn't say anything about time.
When patients are dead enough to get what I call the full ride, they're dead enough to pop out of their body, and they're out long enough to get the full ride. Okay, so when they get the full ride, what happens is they come out and they go into this tunnel, and they go all the way to the end of the tunnel. There's a bright light at the end of that tunnel. Now, not everybody makes it to the end of that tunnel. Some of them get pulled back into their body before they make it to the end, and they don't know what's going on. Some of them are even frightened because they think it's a train tunnel. I've literally had patients who thought they were in a train tunnel, and I had one lady who was there twice, and each time she was afraid of the train. Well, people who make it to the tunnel and see the light at the end don't know who or what that light is. But every single person that makes it to the end of that tunnel and makes it to the light says that the light is God. I really can't count the number of times I've had patients who have had this experience, and every single person says the light is God. I used to record their stories. I was fascinated by this when I first got started into practice several years ago, but I stopped doing it because the stories take too long. Nobody wants to listen. I mean, it's so long. Each person could like write a book, and who would read it? You know, there are already books on this, and I don't have anything new to add, so I abandoned the project. But I still find it fascinating. Anyway, it's in here. So anyway, the people that make it all the way to the end of the tunnel, to the light, they all say that the light is God. It doesn't matter where in the world they're from. It doesn't matter how old they are, from the age of 3 to 103, doesn't matter. Everybody that makes it to the end of that tunnel, to the light, will tell you the light is God. How do they know it's God? They just know. With an absolute knowledge, they just know. Everybody, that's what they say. They just know. So when they get there, and when they're with him, everybody's experiencing this incredible love. I mean, they say that the light, it comes out of him and it penetrates you. And, you know, you don't have to take my word for it. Go on YouTube and look up near-death experiences, and you get the idea. Okay, I'm not bringing anything new to the table here. No surprises. So you feel this love and this sense of complete and utter belonging. A sense that, you know, no matter, you know that he knows everything about you, no matter what, every detail of your life, and yet there's still this immense, incredible love, this sense of utter belonging and peace. It's a euphoria that extends, that is beyond any drug experience that anybody has ever had. It is the highest high you can possibly imagine. It's complete and utter fulfillment. And you don't want to leave. Nobody wants to leave that experience. But when you're with him, very often you get the movie. And for those who've had this experience, you know exactly what I'm talking about. In the movie, this is where you get to see in 3D your whole life. Everything you've ever done, everything you've ever thought about, the whole deal. From the time you were born all the way up until you crossed over, every detail of your life is reviewed. It's all there. And as you're watching it, he's there with you. And what my patients will say is that the things that you do out of the goodness of your heart, because you genuinely had concern for another person, because you wanted good for somebody, out of genuine affection, things you do out of genuine affection, kindness, love, support, you want to see more of that. The things that you do to pursue wisdom and knowledge, the things that you do to grow your relationship with God, those are things that get his pleasure, that you can sense his pleasure, you can sense his approval. The things that you do out of anger, lust, revenge, greed, fear, not so much. You know, you're going to sense the negative vibes that arise from him. Now, he doesn't have to talk. There's not necessarily talking going on. You just know. All right. Now, this is not judgment. This is not about heaven or hell. This is about this. God knows you're not going to stay. Okay, he knows who's coming back and who's staying. This is not about what happens in the beyond as far as judgment. This is an educational experience for people, and people are usually educated by it, and they change. But what happens is that after these experiences, they take a look at their lives, and they say, hey, you know, I would like to see more of the good stuff and not so much of the bad stuff, and it gives them a chance to make some changes. And then he says, you have work to do, or there's things you need to learn, or things you need to do, or both, for me. And then he sends them back. Now, what's happening is when they see this movie of their lives, it takes a long time. It takes a lifetime to watch. And yet they come back to Earth, and only a minute or two have passed. So, going back to that statement, all that to respond to your question, what about time? Well, when this extracorporeal aspect of ourselves, our souls, if you will, come out, time is different, because clearly these people say they spent years, if you will, watching this movie of their lives, and yet it only took moments. And they also report having memories of experiences there that their brains here can't hold, because there are sensations that you have, that you can, the colors and sounds and smells, touch, everything is more there than it is here, and the human brain can't hold it all. So again, is human consciousness, is a part of human consciousness outside of time and space? It can be. It can be. And maybe that explains precognition to some degree as well, in some instances. Anyway, I'm off track a little bit, but I just wanted to address that whole time and space issue. And this near-death experience, I think, addresses both in many ways. So again, I disagree with Dr. Young's statement that we can't even think about the cause of synchronicity because our consciousness is bound by the laws of time and space. We can think about the causes of synchronicity, and we do think about it. That's why we blame God. Look, people who have strong faith evolved that faith because they have seen throughout their lives many instances of wild coincidences that have occurred in response to prayer. And that proved to them that God was actually actively working in their lives. And they call these coincidences miracles. Like all people, these people experience trouble. They experience the threat of more trouble in the future, the threat of loss of a job, the loss of a house, the loss of a spouse, the loss of a child, whatever, you name it. Those threats are there. Those experiences of loss, pain, and shame are there too. They go through a cycle of trouble with the threat of future trouble, followed by a cry to God for help, followed by a synchronicity, which is perceived as a divine rescue. When that rescue keeps coming time after time in the form of these improbable events, or presumably in response to prayer, it increasingly strengthens one's belief that not only is God real, He's real for me.
What kind of miracles are you talking about? Clearly, you're not talking about real miracles, such as the growth of a new limb by an amputee.
We're back to that. Okay, in your zeal to make a point, you're becoming irrational. Does it follow logically that if I refuse to buy my son a pony, therefore I refuse to buy him food or answer any of his other requests for sustenance? Does God have to violate the laws of physics to perform a miracle that I'm going to respond to? What you're saying is that if God doesn't violate the laws of physics for amputees, He therefore answers no prayers. Because any other prayer, any other answer to prayer is a non-answer until He takes care of that amputated limb. Where are you getting that? Who do you think you are? I happen to know Christians with amputations, and they do believe that God answers their prayers in many areas. They describe multiple incidences where they have experienced synchronicities that they interpret as miracles and divine intervention on their behalf, even though their limbs don't grow back. Whoa!
Weak-minded, uneducated lemmings.
Alrighty then. We will handle the next question on the next program. Thanks for watching.